Thank you very much, Mr. Undersecretary General. I'd like now to call to the podium a woman who needs really no introduction. Dr. Phumzile Mlambo Ngcuka, Undersecretary General, Executive Director, United Nations Entity for Gender Equality and the Empowerment of Women.
Thank you, Program Director. Ladies and gentlemen, Excellencies, brothers and sisters, it's wonderful that today it's a Friday, the last day of the year, because it has been hectic. I think many of you here, like myself, we have been speed dating, just moving from one activity to another, just for a short while and then rushing to something else, but all for a good cause. Would rather be that busy than have nothing to do. But it's good to have a Friday, nevertheless. On behalf of the UN Senior African Group, which we co-chair with Adama, would like to welcome you again this year. And would like to thank Jibril for everything he does to make all of this come together. We thank you for continuing to be focused on issues that affect our continent. And I thank also Adama, who is threatening to leave us here at the UN and said this is his last UNSAC meeting this year. It's just been wonderful to work with you. Wherever you go, I'm following. As a result of this coordination and collaboration of UN Senior African Groups, we have been able to strengthen the working relationships between the UN and the AU, but also because of the many other efforts that many people who are in this room and beyond many efforts that the people are responsible for. So we play a small part in making sure that we strengthen that relationship. The SG has been very gracious to our group. He tries to meet with us at least twice a year, and as often as we would like to, in order to consult us about the decisions that are being taken in the UN that affect the African continent. And we truly appreciate those meetings because we're able to be very frank. We also try, as the UN Senior African Group, to keep in touch with our colleagues throughout the world, but I have to say it's not working that well. So we still have to strengthen the platform that enables us to coordinate and to stay in touch with all our colleagues all over the continent. Today, we are discussing Africa, and we're talking about an Africa that is open for business. And I want to add that it must be an Africa that is open for business in a conversation that also includes women. Because even though women in Africa are enterprising and have proven themselves, the majority of women in Africa are still in the informal sector. And this is something that we need to change so as to make sure that women in Africa are also in the commanding heights of the African economies. It will not be possible for the continent to prosper to the extent that it needs to be if we do not address this issue systematically, because the continent needs women at their best. Have you ever noticed that we are the only continent that is called the continent? And whenever you say the continent, everyone knows that you're talking about Africa. Something special about that. So we have unique opportunities now that demonstrates that we are open for business. And of course, the African Free Trade Area is one such opportunity. If we think of the fact that India has about 1.2 billion people. China also 1.2, I think probably more, billion people. In Africa, we're also 1.2 billion people. So we're equal markets in that way. But these two countries have one border. So all of the hassles of going through borders does not occur to them, and that fuels their prosperity. They also have one currency. They do not have the challenges of exchange rates that we experience in our continent. The harmonization of the different instruments that impact of our economy that will come with the free trade area will therefore make it possible for us to be as competitive as these markets that are of comparable size to us. And this is something that we have to seize with both hands. But we have to have a strategy, and we have to have very clear goals. We also have to make sure that in our strategies, as I said, we address some of the barriers, some of which impact specifically and in particular to women. I'd like to emphasize the importance of effectively using technology on the continent and engaging young people front and center.
The man in the blue.
The importance of dealing with the harmful practices that impact on women and rob us of human resources in gigantic proportion. If you think of the girls that are trapped in child marriage, whose lives are finished at the age of 12, it's a huge human resource that you take away from the economy. If you think about the young girls that drop out of school, even though we've seen significant increase when it comes into access to girls' education in Africa, but we still have a long way to go for us to be where we want to be. So we have opportunities, we have challenges, but we also have answers, I believe, and such fora makes it possible for us to discuss the answers and the solutions to the problems. We also know now it is possible to develop and to turn around economies in a generation. Those of you who are old enough like me, you remember when there was a famine in Ethiopia and life was so hard, you didn't even want to watch the TV. For those of us who were old enough already at that time and can remember the details, you look at Ethiopia today and you see how that country is moving forward. And this is just in a period of 30 years. So we have some playbooks that we can learn from in Africa that demonstrates that for the problems that we have, there are solutions and lessons that you can learn from each other. I look forward to our deliberations. Thank you.